Welcome to day 11 of the 30-day Bible reading plan. We're in 1 Samuel 8, and here we're going to see sort of the development of Israel's kingship as they begin to request a king, and in doing so, they're actually rejecting the Lord. So let's jump in here. 1 Samuel chapter 8, when Samuel, and he's the prophet priest in the area, became old, he made his sons judges over Israel. The name of his firstborn son was Joel, and the name of his second, Abijah or Abiyah. They were judges in Beersheba. Yet his sons did not walk in his ways, but turned aside after gain. So they're greedy, and they will die for it later in the narrative, not in this passage, but in another. They took bribes and perverted justice. Then all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah and said to him, "Behold, you are old, and your sons do not walk in your ways." And here's their request. Now appoint for us a king to judge us like all the nations. And here's the really key phrase, like all the nations. So they don't want to be distinct. They don't want to be the royal priesthood or the nation set apart for Yahweh. They want to be like everybody else. And you can see the reaction here. But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, "Give us a king to judge us." And so Samuel prays to the Lord, and the Lord said to Samuel, "Obey the voice of the people in all that they say to you, for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me from being king over them." See, the Lord's plan was that they would learn to love him and trust him and be ruled by him. And yet they're rejecting him because they want to be like everybody else. They want to be like the other nations. So they're rejecting the Lord. "According to all the deeds that they have done from the day I brought them up out of Egypt, even to this day, forsaking me and serving other gods, so they are also doing to you. Now then, obey their voice, only you shall solemnly warn them and show them the ways of the king who shall reign over them." So Samuel's going to tell them what it's going to be like to have a king. A king is a human. He's frail. He's fallen. He's going to be subject to all of those things. He's not going to be good like the Lord. So Samuel told all the words of the Lord to the people who were asking for a king from him. And here's some of the things they can expect. He said, "These will be the ways of the king who will reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them to his chariots and to be his horsemen and to run before his chariots. And he will appoint for himself commanders of thousands and commanders of fifties, and some to plow his ground and to reap his harvest and to make his implements of war and the equipments of his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers and cooks and bakers. He will take the best of your fields and vineyards and olive orchards and give them to his servants. He will take the tenth of your grain and of your vineyards and give it to his officers and to his servants. He will take your male servants and female servants and the best of your young men and your donkeys and put them to his work. He will take the tenth of your flocks, and you shall be his slaves. And in that day you will cry out because of your king, because you have chosen for yourselves." So here, notice the irony of this. In that day you will cry out because of your king. So they're going to ask for this king, and they're going to reject the Lord in the process. They're going to say, what we really want is to be like everybody else. We don't want to follow the way of the Lord. We want a king who can lead us to war, who can lead us like other nations. And in that day, we're going to cry out. And it's interesting, this za'ak here is the verbal form for cry out. And the same form is what we see like when Israel's in Egypt and they cry out for the Lord. So it's going to be a form of oppression almost. "Whom you have chosen for yourselves, but the judgment's this, the Lord will not answer you in that day." So they have rejected a God who would provide for them, who would give them abundantly if they would just have faith or trust in the Lord. But they are not trusting in the Lord. They are rejecting him because they want things their way. And you see that here in verse 19. But the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel. Instead, they want the king. They refused to obey the voice of Samuel, and they said, "No, but there shall be a king over us." Why? So that we may be like all the nations. So that's their desire, not to be holy, not to be a nation set apart for the Lord, but to be like the others, that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. And see here, they're thinking in terms of military victory. They're thinking in terms of government. And by the way, the Lord's plan isn't to never have a king or never have a kingdom. But they're doing this all in their own strength and in their own way. They want to be like the other nations. They want to fight battles like them. And when Samuel had heard all the words of the people, he repeated them in the ears of the Lord. And the Lord said to Samuel, "Obey their voice, and make them a king." This is judgment. And Samuel then said to the men of Israel, "Go every man to his city." So what we're going to see in Israel's history is that no king is perfect, not even the best king. Saul is going to let them down. David, who is the best king in Israel's history, is ultimately going to fail. And all of these patterns of good kings and bad kings are going to point us to a greater king, the real king that we need, who is Christ the King, God's chosen king to rule the nations, to rule the universe. I hope to see you tomorrow as we continue our reading plan. If you need the reading plan, it's below there, and you can find it in the description of the video, or you can find it on the Facebook post if that's how you got here as well. We'll see you tomorrow and for upcoming videos.